Whoopsie, 8:12 on this Thursday morning. Highs of 98 today and tomorrow, very hot. Virtually no chance for thunderstorms, they're saying, but you never know where one could pop up. 40% chance for showers Saturday with highs of 98. And then Sunday, a 70% chance for rain, stormy at times, highs still of 90 degrees, so it is plenty hot. July, and as a matter of fact, from now until the middle of August is about the hottest time of year here in Louisiana, and as the temperature rises, so does the risk for heat-related illnesses. Dr. Brent Wallis, Chief Medical Officer of People's Health, joins us now to discuss heat stroke and how to stay safe in the summer sun. Good morning, Doc. How are you?
Hey, Tommy, I'm good. A little steamy out there, though.
I'm telling you, you've been spending time around the pool or not?
Yeah, the pool's almost too hot.
That's not, I know people that sometimes have to get ice and put in the pool. They say it's too hot to even go in.
Yeah. I've got a friend who has a chiller. You'd never think you'd have to use that, but it lowers the temp a couple of degrees. Yeah.
For the pool? I didn't know they made such a thing.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. Let's talk about heat stroke. What is it?
Yeah, sure. You know, a lot of people don't realize heat stroke is a life-threatening condition, and what happens, it's when the body gets overheated and really can't properly cool itself. And the most severe form of heat-related illness can really damage your brain and actually other vital organs that are in your body as well.
And I'm going to ask you what causes it. Naturally, people are going to think heat, but it's a little bit more involved than that.
Yeah, it's a little more complex. There's really two different types of heat stroke, and the first one is what we call exertional heat stroke. So what that's going to be, like the name sounds like, it's caused by doing strenuous physical activity outdoors in the hot, humid weather. And anybody can get that kind of heat stroke, but it's definitely more likely to occur if you're not used to working out in the high temperatures. The second type, which is a little more common, is called non-exertional heat stroke, and that's kind of the classic heat stroke we think about. It's caused by that prolonged exposure to hot, humid weather, but it doesn't involve physical activity. So you can just be sitting in your house.
So really, if the air conditioning's not on and it's that hot?
Yeah, absolutely. And people who don't have air conditioning are really more subject to non-exertional heat stroke.
What are the risk factors for heat stroke?
Yeah, I mean, really anybody can get it, but in particular we worry about either young children or adults over 65. They have a higher risk, really because their bodies have a harder time staying hydrated. They don't have as much total body water, and they have a little more trouble regulating their temperature as well. And then the other things you want to think about is, you know, if you or someone you know has had a history of heat stroke, you're more likely to have it again. Obviously, us who live in Louisiana, we're at a higher risk because of our hot, humid climate. And then, you know, people that work outside or play outside, construction workers, farmers, even people who do athletics, football in particular, you know, they have a much higher risk. And then people who have certain health conditions, things that affect your heart and your lungs, can actually increase your risk for heat stroke. And so the other thing you want to think about is medications you may be taking. So in particular, diuretics, which we use sometimes for high blood pressure, can affect your ability to stay hydrated. And so they're going to increase your risk as well. So you may want to ask your doctor or the pharmacist if you're on a medication that could affect this, especially this time of year.
What are some of the warning signs of heat stroke?
So the absolute number one is going to be a high body temperature, and more specifically, it means when your core body temperature goes up to 104 or higher. And keep in mind that your normal body temperature is 98.6, so it's a pretty dramatic increase. And then the other signs that you really want to watch for is, in addition to the high temp, is having a headache, usually pretty severe. People may have rapid breathing. They often will have real flushed or reddish skin without sweating. And then they can develop nausea and vomiting. And in the most severe cases, they can have confusion or even agitation, maybe slurred speech.
What should somebody do if they notice that they have signs of heat stroke or see it in somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing to remember is that heat stroke is a medical emergency. So, you know, that's why we call it stroke. Just like if you had a stroke of your brain, you want to call 911 immediately if you see somebody having, especially that confusion and agitation with a high body temperature. And then before help arrives, you want to try to lower the body temperature as soon as possible. Often you can do that with either cold compresses. You want to see if they can tolerate fluids. You want to try to get them to drink cool fluids. And then try to move them into an air-conditioned spot. If you're out working and you're, out in the yard or out in a park or something, at least moving into the shade and not being in the direct sun can help as well.
Is there a particular part of the body to which you should apply that cold compress?
Typically it helps if you do it kind of around the neck. You'll even see some little cooling cloths that they sell. And then people usually will also put cool cloths under the arms as well, kind of in the armpits, because that's where you lose a lot of your heat. And if you're not able to sweat, you can't get rid of that heat. So you want to put that cool compress right there.
Some other health conditions that can be brought on by the heat?
Yeah, heat stroke's not the only one. Excuse me. You can also get a little more simple, milder forms of heat illness. So heat cramps are pretty common this time of year. Those are really just muscle pain or spasms. They usually happen in your extremities, so your arms or legs. Some people can actually get heat cramps in their stomach as well. Fluids are going to help with that especially. And then another one we see quite often this time of year is heat rash, or some people call it prickly heat. And what that is a skin irritation that's caused by excessive sweating when you're in this hot, humid weather that we have. And it can cause a stinging sensation, and it looks like a cluster of pimples or small blisters.
So what is heat exhaustion?
Yeah, so heat exhaustion is really a less severe version of heat stroke. And we see that quite often as well. It has similar symptoms, so you can get the nausea and the rapid breathing and fever, but you don't have problems with your brain. So when you start having that confusion, agitation, or slurred speech, that's going to be more related to heat stroke. Heat exhaustion is usually not life-threatening, whereas heat stroke is absolutely life-threatening.
It's uncomfortable. We know that. It's going to be plenty hot today. Highs of 98. Virtually no chance for rain. Same thing tomorrow. We're talking about heat stroke and heat exhaustion, not just in terms of it being uncomfortable, but it being a danger to your health. When we come back, we're going to talk about avoiding the conditions. And what about going outside? What can you do when it can't be avoided? Dr. Brent Wallis, our guest, Chief Medical Officer of People's Health, talking about the heat and heat stroke. 8:20. More when we return. Right now, time for traffic on WWL. 8:25, Tommy Tucker, WWL. Quickly back to Dr. Brent Wallis, Dr. B, Chief Medical Officer of People's Health, our friend. We're in the hottest part of the year now, and as the temperature rises, so does the risk for heat-related illnesses. We've been talking about heat stroke and heat exhaustion. How can you avoid those conditions, Doctor?
Yeah, all these heat-related conditions, especially heat stroke, are extremely dangerous. And the fortunate thing is, if you watch the weather, it's very predictable, and you know what to expect. And so what you want to try to do is, during those hottest parts of the day, try to take it easy a little bit. If you've got to exercise or do some workout outdoors, you want to make sure you try to do that early morning or in the late evening when it's just a little bit cooler. I do that with the dogs. I never take them out at 5 or 6 o'clock. You want to wait until 7 or 8 o'clock, at night so that it's not as hot. And then you want to really take regular breaks if you do have to be outdoors, and maybe cross the street over to the shady side of the street because it's going to be a little bit cooler over there.
Yeah, you got to remember with the dogs too. The concrete is I know this is not about. That's not what People's Health is about. But with the dogs, the concrete. I know you love dogs. The concrete's very hot, and you got to be careful with their paws.
Yeah, if you can't stand on the asphalt, then they can't either. So be very careful about that.
So what about going outside if you can't avoid going outside?
Yeah, we obviously have to go outside, and since this lasts for quite a few months in Louisiana, you just want to make sure you take precautions and, be sure that you're wearing a broad-spectrum sunscreen, SPF 30 or higher. And a lot of people don't realize you really need to apply it about half an hour before you go outside, and then you want to reapply it at least every 2 hours if you've got to be outside for that long. And then make sure you protect your eyes as well. Wear sunglasses. Polarized are really good. That protects you from the sun. And then a wide brim hat can help a little bit. And then loose, lightweight clothing is very important, and it's not just because it feels a little more comfortable. It's also because it allows you to sweat and evaporate that sweat, and that's actually how you cool the body.
Hydration is so important. Talk about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely critical in this weather. You've got to stay hydrated, and so you want to drink plenty of fluids. That's going to help your body sweat and hopefully maintain a little bit of a normal temperature. And typically, I tell people water is really the best thing to do. But if you are sweating heavily for an hour, if you're outside exercising, sports drinks are usually okay. Just keep in mind they do have salt and sugar in them. So if you've got certain health conditions, you don't want to go overboard on that, and maybe talk to your doctor about whether or not you should be using sports drinks. And then, keep an eye out for signs of dehydration. They're pretty typical. Feeling fatigued, having a headache, dry mouth is a very important one. And then infrequent urination, or if your urine is a darker color, that usually means that you are dehydrated. And keep in mind that if you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So you don't want to wait until you feel thirsty to drink water. You want to drink it consistently throughout the day.
And if you got something coming up the next day, like you're planning on cutting grass or something like that, you almost need to start the day before, don't you, if you got some outdoor activity, playing golf or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. Water load a little bit the day before, and then that morning before you go out. Don't wait until you're outside because you may have a tough time catching up.
What about some tips for staying hydrated?
Yeah, one of the best ways to do it is just access to water. And so get one of those reusable water bottles and fill it, keep it with you and fill it whenever you can. A lot of people pick out a water bottle maybe that has markers on the side, and it can give you an idea of how much you're drinking. The ones that have the little pop-up built-in straw, you're going to be more likely to make sure that you're drinking enough water and you're consistently drinking it. And you do, if you're going to be outside in this hot heat, kind of keep an eye on what your water intake is. You can also do things like eating fruits and vegetables. They have a lot of water content. You can eat them. They'll help you stay hydrated. You can also put them in your water if you don't like the taste of water. And then what's really critical is, and people forget to do this, be careful with caffeine and alcohol. Both of those are diuretics, and so they're going to dehydrate you. So you don't want to be drinking a bunch of coffee or a bunch of beer to stay hydrated because it's really not going to help you stay hydrated.
As for me, I'm going to head over to Dr. B's house, slide in a pool. He doesn't know about it, but he'll find out eventually. Hey, thank
Anytime.
you. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate your time. I really do.
Thanks.
You have a good day.
Cool.
Dr. You too, sir. Dr. Brent Wallis, Chief Medical Officer of People's Health. You want to find out more about People's Health, it's as simple as going to peopleshealth.com. You can visit the People's Health Medicare Center at 3017 Vets in Metairie next to Party City. Appointments are recommended. Walk-ins are welcome. You can call 1-800-978-9765, and you can follow People's Health on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to hear what Dr. B was just saying about staying cool and protecting yourself and your loved ones from heat stroke or employees, all you have to do is download the Odyssey app, use the rewind feature. You can go back and hear it all again. Right now, we pause for WWL First News. For that, we go to Dave Cohen.